Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the District 742 School Board meeting. I'm going to start tonight's meeting off with reading the mission statement. Our mission is to create a safe and caring climate and culture in which we prepare, engage, educate, empower, and inspire all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today and tomorrow's society. We will now call the meeting to order. It's roughly 6:30, January 16th, here at City Hall. Les, could you lead us in the pledge, please? Now would you please take roll?
Yes, Jeff Polrice.
Here.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Here.
It's going to be tough for me. Al Dahlgren.
Here.
Shannon Hawes.
Here.
Natalie Ringsmuth.
Here.
Zach Dorholt.
Here.
Les Green is here. Also in attendance, Superintendent Willie Jett, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Marcia Beisch, Executive Director of Learning and Teaching Laurie Posch, Executive Director of Student Services and Special Education, Carol Potter. Yes. Executive Director of Operations, Gary Ganji. Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, Amy Scalarud. Executive Director of Human Resources, Tracy Flynn Bowe. Executive Director of Community Education, Adam Holm. Director of Community Engagement and Communications, Tammy DeLand.
Thank you, Les. Tonight we'll start off with the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that the board routinely adopts without debate. Any single member of the board may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. The full text of the items can be found at the end of the agenda. Tonight's agenda is item A. It's approval of tonight's agenda. Item B, approval of minutes for the meetings we held on December 20th, 2018, January 7th this year, and January 9th of this year. Item C is approval of payment of bills and other financial transactions in the grand amount of $7,849,670.99. Item D is approval of personnel and staff changes. Item C is the acceptance of grant awards and donations. Item F is call for request for proposals, audit services. Item G is quarterly expenditures for board members from October 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018. And item H, Tech High School, new site change orders totaling $88,926.35. I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, would you mind taking a roll?
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Zach Dorholt. Yes. Jeff Polrice.
Yes.
Les Green is yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Next up is our information items. Item number A is Partners in Education Pie Awards. It will be presented by Volunteer Coordinator Natha Vinwathan and Nanda. Sorry, Nanda, wherever you are.
The presentation will be made by Bruce Mose.
And Bruce Mose.
Yes, thank
Hello,
you.
Bruce. How are you?
So Chair Polrice, members of the board, Superintendent Willie Jett, and Assistant Superintendent Marcia Beisch, directors, executive directors, one and all, and ladies and gentlemen. So I'm pleased to appear this evening before you so soon after I was once one of you, and I'm going to present information regarding the 10th Annual Partners in Education Awards to be held at the Great River Regional Library on Thursday, April 11th. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge two staff members of the Community Education Program who are instrumental in the planning and organization of the Partners in Education Awards. Nanda Viswanathan, Community Education Volunteer and Facilities Specialist, and Jennifer Noble, Supervisor of Community Education. My role in this annual event is as Advisor Emeritus and Master of Ceremonies. The first PI Awards event took place in November of 2009. It was an idea that originated from the Community Linkages Committee meeting in the summer of 2009. I was chairing the committee at the time, and I brought the conceptual idea to the Board of Education for approval and authorization. The board directed the Community Linkages Committee at that time to plan, to prepare, and to present these annual awards in a public ceremony prior to a board meeting in these very chambers. We did that for the first 2 years until it was determined that the event had grown in size, stature, purpose, and protocol beyond these chambers. We then switched the event to a spring date and alternated between Tech and Apollo for 6 years. Last year, we moved to the Great River Regional Library in keeping with the community and public nature of the event. The 2019 PI Awards are being held once again at the Great River Regional Library on Thursday, April 11th. The social gathering begins at 4:30 p.m. in the Bremer Room, and the program begins at 6 o'clock in the Mississippi Room. This year, all nominations will be online. There are no paper nominations. Teachers, principals, executive directors, board members, and members of the community are all invited to submit nominations in one of 3 categories. The categories are partner benefactors, partner volunteers, and partner organizations. A partner benefactor award is presented to organizations, businesses, or individuals that have provided financial or material resources to support students, educators, programs, or services. A partner volunteer award is presented to individuals who have volunteered their time and effort and talent to support students, educators, programs, and services. And a partner organization award is presented to organizations that have provided their time and talent to support students, educators, programs, or services. Each of the categories have their own specific sets of rigorous criteria. The spirit and intent of these nominations is to identify individuals, organizations, or businesses that have made significant contributions to a classroom, a school, or the school district. In addition to a descriptive narrative focused on one or more of the criteria in each category, each nomination also requires a strong written statement of support by the nominator. The nomination forms can be accessed by going to the district website, clicking on Community Education, and then clicking on Partners and Education Awards. The deadline for submission is no later than March 8th at 4 p.m. Any nominations received after the deadline will not be eligible for consideration. The award ceremony is designed and carried out in a manner which is purposeful and deliberate in its ceremonial precision and timing. Beginning last year, the district presented for the first time the inaugural Distinguished Civic Award. The recipient of the Distinguished Civic Award is selected by the PI Organizing Committee. Last year's recipient was the Honorable Mayor Dave Kleiss of St. Cloud. This year's recipient is the Honorable Mayor Rick Miller of Waite Park. During the ceremonies, each board member is asked to participate in 2 ways. First of all, you'll shake lots and lots of hands. And secondly, you'll read descriptive profiles of each awardee. The descriptive profiles that you read are prepared by the organizing committee and requires no additional accolades or spontaneous remarks. So we're talking Thursday, April 11th, Great River Regional Library, social at 4:30, program at 6 o'clock. Are there any questions or comments? Hi, Monica.
I just wanted you to repeat the date and time again.
Yes.
To make sure I have it on my calendar.
April 11th at the Great River Regional Library. That's a Thursday. And the social begins at 4:30 p.m. and the program begins at 6 o'clock p.m.
Any other questions? Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate the presentation. Next up on the agenda is Tech High School presentation by Principal Charlie Eiserink. Sir, there was a question about your shoes.
What shoes? Oh, these shoes. Oh. There you go. Absolutely. Okay. Let me get this clip.
He didn't include me on the shopping spree. Yep. But he's told me that he would, at some point in time, allow all of us to be able to partake in that.
Very good. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Jett. Going to start you off with our presentation of Tech High School with our regular I Am Tech video as soon as I get this called up. So here we go.
My journey in coming to teaching is I never really envisioned myself doing anything else because I came from a family of teachers. My aunt was a teacher, my parents are both retired teachers. My sister was a teacher. She actually taught next door to me as a fax teacher, so for years and years and years we shared right next door to each other.
I was born in Ethiopia, then my family moved to Somalia, because we are almost at the border between Ethiopia and Somalia. Then a civil war broke in 1988. We moved to Ethiopia, stayed there in a refugee for 9 years, then moved back again to Somalia, the northern part of Somalia. My typical day look like attending IEB meetings, providing interpretation and translation services here at Tech, welcoming parents who come to check their students' performance.
My speech coaching, that too has defined who I am. My mom was the speech debate coach in the school I was at, and so I really didn't have a choice. If I wanted to eat dinner, I was going to be on the speech team. Even to this day, my mom is 81, and there isn't a tournament that I go to, even this weekend in Iowa. She's calling me, how are they doing, and who's been breaking into the finals, and what are their topics. And so I think that part of it has been unique for me and valuable.
My favorite thing about Tech is the communication skill or the problem-solving skill that I'm learning from here. And professionalism, for me, it is about learning. It's not about work. It's about learning the skill and the knowledge of helping students to become successful.
The feeling at Tech in 26 years, I'm a little sad about leaving the building, because every morning when I walk in, you do feel that, especially when I get to my classroom, and whether it's working with students in the classroom or on the speech team, that there is a tradition of excellence, and there is the sense of pride. And we always hear about Tech pride, but it is a real thing. And so part of me is a little sad about leaving the school, but it's time. It's time to new traditions, keeping that camaraderie and keeping that family feel. I'm looking forward to that.
I am Tech.
I am Tech.
Okay, now that you had a chance to see a little bit about Tech, let me begin by inviting you to take a walk with me. A walk on a journey from our 102-year-old tradition-rich institution to a new and improved Tech Senior High School that will serve the next generations of District 742 students well into the 21st century. This year, Tech's October 1st student enrollment included 1,555 students. And as you can see by our breakdown by race, we have over 50% of our student population that is non-white. I believe that's the first time in our history of Tech High School. This year, our student body identifies as 52% free and reduced, which is actually down a percentage point from last year, while our special education enrollment rose slightly over last year with 225 identified students receiving special education services. Over the past few years, we've increased our percentage of students taking AP and honors or advanced level classes, programs like AVID, and a more concerted effort to encourage high potential students to take more rigorous courses from our counselors at Tech and at South has helped improve these numbers immensely. The number of students taking post-secondary enrollment option courses is pretty much on par with previous years. We continue to have a relatively high attendance rate at over 95%, which is about the same as in previous years. Our 4- and 7-year graduation rates continue to be above the state average. With that said, last year we were identified as a school needing comprehensive support in the new ESSA system due to our special education student grad rate. Currently, our SPED department as a whole has made grad rate a goal in their data team work. However, I would point out that state-level personnel have acknowledged that our 5-, 6-, and 7-year grad rate for special education students is exceptional. In addition, we continue to boast one of the most successful advanced placement programs in the area, if not in the state. Just last year in 17-18, over 74% of our AP students attained a score of 3 or more on the AP exams, which is well above the state average. Last year we had 89 AP scholars, which is up from 80 the previous year. AP scholars are students recognized for scoring a 3, 4, or 5 on 3 or more AP exams. The 330 students represented about 22% of our total student population last year. Last year, our students took 17 AP classes, which prepared them for 20 different AP exams. This year, we have more students in advanced placement courses than last year, which includes 25% students of color, which is up from 22% last year. While we certainly feel good about the increase and we celebrate that, we also know we have lots to improve upon to encourage more students from underrepresented student groups to take advanced placement courses. While we continue to have a highly successful advanced placement program, we also believe that student support programs and initiatives continue to provide the much needed assistance for all students to be successful. We call this our rainbow of supports. I mentioned AVID earlier. AVID is Advancement via Individual Determination. We have C4 courses, College, Career, Character, and Citizenship, a course for 9th and 10th graders. We have Dreamline, a supportive program that provides tutoring for underrepresented students. Monthly, we continue to implement social-emotional learning lessons in our homerooms. Our multi-tiered systems of support team meets weekly to go through student data and to provide interventions for struggling students. We have teacher teams come together to discuss identified students who show potential and need some direction in preparation for our MCA exams. And one of those programs that I'd like to highlight for you tonight is our all-new BARR initiative for our 9th grade students. BARR stands for Building Assets, Reducing Risks, and comes out of our high school programming discussions that we've had for the last few years. BARR is a nationwide program that focuses on 9th grade students, and one of the chief goals is to reduce the number of failing grades for freshman students. It's well documented that transitioning from middle school to high school can be very challenging. So BARR allows for a more purposeful and relation-based instructional environment inside the classroom. This year we are piloting the program for 91 randomly selected 9th graders in language arts, science, social studies, and health. And as you can see, after the first trimester, the comparison with non-BARR 9th grade students demonstrates significant improvement. I'd like to turn our attention to student activities. We are extremely proud of our activities program, and we continually to succeed in athletic and academic competitions. We have 31 girls and boys athletic opportunities with 34 academic and fine arts activities and clubs. I've always say there is something for every student at Tech High School. I'm going to play this little video here for you. Our math team is a 22-time conference champion. The speech team has won 25 consecutive conference titles. We had a robotics team, which is pictured up here, win a state title last year, and we've already qualified for nationals this year. This particular video shows our robotics club giving a little demonstration for our alumni association or members of that group because the alumni association at Tech supports the robotics program and gives scholarships for some of the needy students on those teams. I also want to mention that our tennis and gymnastics teams continue to be perennial conference and section champs. In addition, just last year we had 5 Tech graduates receive Division I athletic scholarships. We wouldn't be successful without great students who understand what it takes to be high achievers. When we look at student behavior, over 1,400 of our current students fall within Tier 1, or what we call the green zone, indicating 0 or only 1 office discipline referral for behavior. Over 1,260 Tech students have no office discipline referrals this year. Because of our great kids, Tech is one of the only high schools in the state of Minnesota to be recognized 2 years in a row as a PBIS sustained exemplar school. And one of the ways that we encourage appropriate behaviors with our students and demonstrating how students meet expectations is to encourage and reward our staff. We are in our 2nd year of dividing all staff into what we call houses. Think Harry Potter. And we have a friendly competition among those houses. Staff receive points for using positive slips to reinforce appropriate behavior with students, as well as participating in regular events such as our Friday Spirit Days, things like wearing crazy shoes, or College Gear Days. It's a great way to improve climate and also have a bit of fun along the way. We'll certainly continue our house competition as we move into the new space in the fall, and as we consider our move, this year our professional development has focused on personalized learning with our staff. We've designed our PD to provide more choices for our teachers, just as we want for our senior high students. We've challenged licensed staff and provided opportunities to climb the SAMR ladder, as it's called, when it comes to technology integration in the classroom. Our tool for this has been Schoology, where we focused on enhancing student collaboration and using student voice in classroom lessons. Just a week ago, we focused our efforts on small group and differentiated instruction. Our pilot classroom has allowed our teachers to practice what they will experience at the new school. It has afforded staff the opportunity to create and practice using 21st century technology with flexible learning spaces that can maximize student interaction and collaboration. And as you can imagine, we are excited about the new school, and we're a bit nervous at the same time. As I've reported over the past 2 years, several groups of teachers have been directly involved in selecting classroom and lab equipment, specific area designs and color schemes, along with materials for our new home. It's truly been an amazing journey. Staff are beginning to realize it will be different, yet I'm confident that the traditions of the old Tech will not be lost, maybe modified some, and that we can forge new traditions as we move our student learners further into the 21st century. And as we begin those preparations to move to the new site, Activities Director Langerud has embarked on a fundraising campaign to help raise funds for all of our programs. Dave has already secured a couple of partners and is aggressively working to acquire more in the upcoming months. And one of the things that he's worked together with our district communications department is a video that he will show when he goes out to solicit some of these donations. And if I can get this to work, we will play that. Here we go.
In November of 2016, the voters approved a referendum to build a new high school. This lush site includes many environmental features that provide unique learning experiences for our students. It even has a trout stream. The school itself will house up to 1,600 students with expansion capabilities. It has a 4-station multi-purpose gymnasium along with athletic fields and a stadium. And yes, there will be dedicated space for Tech alumni functions, including Tech history and memorabilia. There will be a Tiger Den. What's exciting is what comes next, because there will always be another class of distinguished Tech alumni ready to carry on that tradition of excellence.
We're challenged to see the world in different perspectives. Really, I think tech is more of a salad bowl rather than a melting pot. Everyone sticks out as individuals, although we're all still in it together. The other thing about tech is that we uphold our own. Look at our arts, academics, and athletics. We've graduated Rhodes Scholars, National Merit Scholars, professional athletes, and Olympians. We take our standard and we go beyond. That shocks some people. The fact that tech is 100 years old is pretty awesome. Not many people can say they've graduated as the 100th class. Tech's tradition is upholding success and excellence. It's like wearing a brand and showing it to the world. And we do that. We do that with pride. I'm really excited about the new Tech High School, and I won't even be going there, but my siblings will. And I'm excited for the new space of learning they'll have. Tech is not really defined by a building at all. It's the people inside who embody what we really value about the school. It's the teachers and the staffs and the students who strive to succeed. It's a sense of community and pride that we carry with us long after we've walked out the door. The thing about tech is we don't disappoint.
All right, and that closes out the presentation.
Any questions? Shannon?
Thank you very much, Charlie. I have a couple comments, I guess. One, I want to point out that to the board members, if you saw the student enrollment numbers for this year were 1555, and know what we were building the space for the new Tech High School, and keep that in mind, because that school is growing and growing, and I think we built it for 1,600. So as we're looking for our future needs in space, that potential does exist. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to Dave Langrud and the boys swimming team. I have heard from multiple people what a great alumni swimming meet that they put on last week, and how fabulous it was, just from different groups of people coming at me. So well done there. Thank you very much. From my children that have gone there, I can tell you this is a school of excellence. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Monica?
Great presentation, thank you. A couple of questions that I have. I'm a bit concerned with the MCA scores, and I do understand that, but they're not the best describers of excellence, but there are high discrepancies between groups, and I'd like you to say a little bit more about that. Also, in a school where 40-something% of the students are black and 44-something% of the students are white. I'm also interested in knowing what do you do to address cultural difference of the students that don't fall in those two groups.
So say that one more time so I catch it clearly.
So let's go with the MCA scores and then I'll repeat my question.
So how are we working with the MCA scores? And yeah, so what I can, we go back to that kind of rainbow of supports, if you will. And one of the things that we'll be doing actually just this month is starting our wraparound meetings with our teachers. So we've identified students already that are what we consider below proficient. We used STAR test data. We've used MCA scores from prior years. Now, realizing that we don't have an MCA exam for our 9th graders, our reading exam is taken in 10th grade, and then our math exam in 11th grade. So what we're doing then is once we've identified those students, we're bringing the team of teachers for those identified students together. And so if I'm one of those identified students, my teachers, all 5, 6, or 7 of them, are going to be coming together. That's why we call it a wraparound meeting, because it's all of my course teachers together, and we're going to talk about that student. We're going to determine what can I do. Say if I was his or her math teacher, what am I going to do in my math class to help student X read better? What kind of vocabulary pieces can I emphasize in my math classroom so that they can do a better job on that MCA reading exam? So, and that would be encompassed in social studies, science, language arts, health, phy-ed, whatever course they have, the teachers come together with a mini plan. What we found by doing these the past 2 years is that even though those students have been non-proficient on prior MCA exams, maybe in middle school, maybe their STAR scores haven't been meeting target scores, we found that 2/3 of those students were then proficient on the MCAs. And it was simply by getting together, meeting, and coming up with a plan, an individual plan for those students. Now, we know that there's some students that are coming to us with reading levels that are quite low. They're coming to us as 9th graders, as 10th graders. They still end up taking some of these exams. They may not be necessarily proficient, but we are demonstrating significant growth. So it still is going to show that they weren't proficient. We're still going to come up short, yet we know that they have demonstrated sometimes 2, if not 3 or 4 grade level increases in their ability to read. They're still just not up to that 10th grade level, and we need them for more years.
Thank you. And my second question was about, so having those 2 large ethnic groups that you have 40-something white students and 40-something black students. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to know, what do you do to address cultural differences of the students that do not fall in those 2 categories?
So right now, we're spending much of our time during our homeroom time, twice a month. I mentioned those social emotional learning lessons, but we also, from our PBIS lens, look at the different differences in cultures. We tend to make these as grade level as appropriate. We've also incorporated class meetings. So, for example, I had the junior class just a couple weeks ago where we talked about some of those differences that kids will experience. In general, we truly, honestly don't have a whole lot of problems cross-culture. Okay, when we have issues, it's within the white culture, if you will, or the black culture. And again, I think we're making some great strides in improving those relationships every day.
You good, Monica? Al, you're up.
Charlie, tell me a little bit more about the fundraising you were talking about at the end there. What are the goals of the fundraising? Is it a district-wide effort? Is it just for tech? What are we looking at?
Well, we certainly like to have it just for tech, but we understand that the referendum was passed to build a new school, but it's a district school. And so while the portions of the funds, and really what we're talking about is scoreboards and using the advertising that's available for our indoor and outdoor scoreboards. So we know that those were slightly more expensive than what was budgeted for, so we want to use the revenue generated by the advertising dollars to help pay for the overage there, and then also be able to continue fundraising for many years to come that would go back into the district general fund.
There isn't anything as far as naming rights or anything like that included in that you were talking about? It was mainly
no, not
selling of advertising or
no.
Okay.
We're not going down that road, unless a potential donor has a significant amount of funds that they would, and then we'd certainly go through the correct naming rights process.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you on graduation rates, on 4-year and 7-year graduation rates. You were showing that you have higher than state average on in both categories. Higher than the state average on 4-year and higher than the state average on 7-year.
That's correct.
And with really, if you look at most of the other slides, then you're talking about a school that has the deck stacked against them in a lot of ways. Poverty rates. English language learners, just so many different things that affect this district, special education students, but yet when it comes to the graduation rates, we still are higher than the average school in the state, which doesn't face those obstacles.
Yeah, absolutely, and again, our EL department, our EL program in the district is working so hard to provide programming and the grade level appropriate programming for the students to push them further, because like I said before, a lot of the students are coming to us reading at a grade level much lower than 9th grade, and so our teachers work extremely hard. I can say the same thing with our special education. As I mentioned before, the state of Minnesota has recognized the district for the 5-, 6-, and 7-year grad rates, because we know that not all students come to us equipped with the skills to graduate in 4 years. It sometimes takes 5, 6, and even 7 years, and we do a remarkable job during those 4 years as well as the 2 or 3 years afterwards.
Then lastly, I would just say that as far as the new school is concerned, having been here from the beginning on that one, it definitely will change some things in the way that education is delivered, and it's going to change a lot for the teachers, and it might be very scary for the teachers. But I think if you look at it from a student perspective, it's nothing other than exciting. And being excited about going to school is one of the best ways to get results out of a kid, and to be able to provide this type of learning environment to them and to have them, I can't imagine the difference that they're going to feel when in one case they're walking into a dungeon every day, a dungeon of yellow halls, and they're going to be walking into this bright, well-lit, open school with beautiful surroundings, and they're going to have all of their athletic activities and after-school activities on campus. It's a remarkable change for the students, and I think it's going to be a fantastic environment for them for many years to come.
Couldn't agree more.
Natalie?
Yes, I think I turned it on. Okay, thank you, Charlie. I have 2 questions. So the grad rates for the 4- and 7-year that are better than the state average, do you know about how those grad rates break out by race? I'm asking that because of a similar question to Monica, talking about the discrepancy in MCA scores based on race. And so how does that compare with the great work that we're doing of having higher graduation rates than the state?
So are you talking specifically about just the 4-year or the 5, 6, 7-year?
Well, it just
rates?
seems to hit me that if we are having this discrepancy in our MCA scores for math and reading, yet we are happy about our graduate rates being above, does that mean who's hit the hardest? By that is what I'm meaning. So if we're going to, in my opinion anyway, if we are going to break out test scores by race, I'd actually like to see test scores as well broken out by free and reduced lunch versus non-free and reduced lunch to understand how poverty affects that as well. But it seems when we present data like this that we kind of put our silos there, but then maybe I don't understand how those silos fit with our good graduation rates is what I'm asking.
Yep. Okay. Well, and I can say the graduation rates as far as by race mimics some of our other test score data as well. And when we look at our 5, 6, and 7-year rate, much of that actually is special education, where students again are able to get into programs after high school. And so again, there's a strong benefit there. We certainly have to have some work to do, and I know our EL programming is starting to look at a 5th and a 6th year. We don't have that as of right now. So that'll be a significant improvement when we're able to have students that are coming to us that are new to country, and we can have them in our buildings for 5 or 6 years. That'll be a huge difference, and really they need that amount of time because of their lack of years of true coursework coming from refugee camps and other schools that don't have the same abilities that we do. So I don't have those numbers in front of me to reflect on that, but at the same time I know that grad rate mimics by race what our test scores do.
Yeah, and I think, so I understand about EL, but then I also,
What I'd like to add to that, yes, there are gaps, but the rates have been increasing. So if you look at our data over time, the rates have been increasing in our student groups. My example would be our black student grad rates has been increasing each year. And so the one thing I want to add to that, and Principal Eisenreich, as well as all of our principals throughout the district, when you're asking about specific, you wanted information or test scores broken down by race within their buildings. There's no question that Principal Eisenreich knows that, works with that with his staff, works with that with his leadership team, and there's conversation about that. And so I just want to make sure that being perfectly clear, that is information that Dr. Huff provides to our administrators, and it's something that we look at on a daily basis.
Thank you, Willie. Go ahead. Sorry, Natalie, continue.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Willie. The question just is in my mind, why is this happening? And I know that we're not going to solve that here tonight, but that's just the constant question. Why, even for our black non-EL students, do we see half of the achievement that we do for our white students? And, that's a whole dissertation, I'm sure, and I know that we're working on it as a district, but I'd love to hear your thoughts more on that another time.
No, absolutely, and what I can say is even with our black non-EL students, there's a large percentage that are coming to us without a good, solid, formal educational background. Again, they're coming into high schools with reading levels that are below 9th grade, and so again, we're getting them to improve. They are improving dramatically. It's just that, again, if they're coming to us with a 3rd or 4th grade reading level, and I just had a conversation with a teacher and a parent today just about that, we can ensure that they're going to be, when they leave us even after 1 year, they could be up into the 6th or 7th grade reading level at that point. It's just that they're still not quite ready for that 10th grade MCA exam that we get rated on. So that's that's the challenge.
Number of years in the district, that's an interesting look probably at the MCAs as well.
Yep,
Thank
absolutely.
you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you for your presentation, Charlie.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up on the information agenda is item number C. It's Talent Development and Accelerated Services presentation by none other than the Talent Development and Accelerated Services Coordinator, Laura Stepner.
Thank you. Let's get this pulled up. All right. Chairman Pollery, Superintendent Jett, members of the board. I'm here tonight to share with you about our Talent Development and Accelerated Services program. I'll be sharing our program foundations, its impact on students, a little bit about our program model and what it's built on, and some relevant data. I wanted to start out tonight with this statement that comes directly from our Talent Development Purpose Statement that was written in 2014 by a wide group of stakeholders. There were about 35 people who came together to build our Talent Development Program model. And this first sentence of our purpose statement says that talent development programming is an equitable access, needs-oriented program for students who've demonstrated high achievement or the potential for high achievement. And these 4 pieces are very critical to the program model that we offer here in District 742. We're committed to having an equitable access program based on students accessing it when they need it, and we're providing services for both students who are achieving already at high levels and for those students who have indicators of potential to achieve at high levels. Our program also, sorry about that. Our program also has some big ideas that it's based on. These are our programmatic foundations, the things that guide what it is that we do. And first and foremost, in District 742, what we believe about giftedness is it's a type of behavior and not a type of student. We believe that gifted behavior can be shown in people in certain circumstances and at certain times. And because of this, we believe firmly that schools have the responsibility to create the conditions or the catalyst to actualize potential that we see in our students. Knowing that we don't believe that you either are or are not gifted, and that's something that can be cultivated and developed, we look for ways to create that experience for students that really draws out that potential. Additionally, we do not believe in labeling students as gifted. We identify students for our talent development services. Every single one of our service options has a unique identification protocol, and that means we are able to design the protocols to look for the students who will be best matched within that service model. And that allows us to provide a right service, right now approach. We're looking to match students to what they need when they need it. This is a quote from educational researcher Benjamin Bloom that I think really speaks to the talent development model that we provide in our district. What Benjamin Bloom says is that it is likely that some combinations of the home, the teachers, the school, and the society may in large part determine what portions of this potential pool of talent become developed. It is also likely that these same forces may, in part, be responsible for much of the great wastage of human potentiality. And this is a heavy quote, but this speaks to the power that we have as an educational system. We can be in the business of creating programs and services that mine for potential and that scout for potential, or we can be in the business of creating services that close doors for students, that actually squander that potential. And in District 742, we are not in the business of wasting any of the limitless potential that our students bring to our schools each and every single day. Beyond that first statement of our purpose statement, we have beliefs and commitments that we hold dear to us in talent development programming. We have a belief and a commitment that's directly related to equitable access. Our belief is that talented students are found in all age, gender, cultural, socioeconomic, and racial groups. And because we believe this, we have to assess it. We have to look at the programs that we have, and we have to see which student groups are represented. So a commitment that we have is that we will assess our program outcomes to ensure that we have continuous improvement and also equitable access and representation. This is critical because the National Association for Gifted Children tells us that for students who live in poverty, they are 2.5 times less likely to be identified and served in gifted programs, even when we control for achievement. So across the nation, 2 students who have the same test scores but a different race have very different outcomes nationally. We want to be a district that identifies students across races, which is why we're committed to assessing our program for representation. We also have commitments related to being a needs-oriented program that provides services for both high-achieving and high-potential students. We're committed to providing a variety of opportunities and programming to meet the educational and social and emotional needs of students who have demonstrated gifted and talented traits and behaviors, high achievement, or potential high ability. And this really relates to the research in the field of gifted education as well. We know from the National Association of Gifted Children that our brightest students, our most high-achieving students, come to us knowing 50% or more of what will be taught in that grade level before school starts on the first day. Knowing that those students require something different to attain a year's worth of growth, which is what all students have the right to achieve, means that we must provide services for our high-achieving students. But in addition, Donald Treffinger, a researcher in gifted education, tells us that promoting the development of talent is as important as meeting the needs of students currently performing, which speaks to Bloom's quote about the wastage of human potential. If we see potential in students and we don't address that, we don't give them what they need to nurture that potential, we are prioritizing high achievement over that high potential. And in District 742, we work to provide programs that are meeting the needs of both of those groups. This is directly connected to our district core value that everyone deserves equitable access to the highest quality of learning to maximize their individual potential. And knowing that we have students in our classroom who are achieving far beyond grade level, these programs are critical to ensure that we are giving them the highest quality of learning to maximize that potential. So this is a graphic that shows our elementary service model. It has 4 components, and these are how we actualize what it is that we stand for. When we think about equitable access, needs-oriented, high achievement, and high potential, this is where it all comes together. You'll see that we offer school-wide enrichment, which is a service for all of our elementary school students, as well as a Young Scholars program, high achievement cluster placement, and support of a talent development specialist, and we also offer grade and subject level accelerations. Our school-wide enrichment model is related to our belief and our commitment that talent development programming should be accessed by all students at a variety of levels based on needs. We believe that every single one of our students benefits from access to enriching opportunities for critical and creative thinking. And so every student in our elementary schools is working with the talent development specialist in some capacity. The specialist is going into classrooms and providing students the opportunity to access gifted and talented content and methodology. We want students to be exposed, and we know that if we do not allow students to do things, we won't know what they're capable of. These are students from Oak Hill on your screen who are working with robotics. School-wide enrichment was focused on coding, and every student was thinking about how they could solve complex, rigorous problems using coding and thinking skills. Every single student gets this opportunity, and it's been beneficial for our learners across the district. We also can scout for talent during this time, and we can say, who are the kids who are really standing out to us, and are those students that we need to match to another level of service? With that right service right now approach, this is an opportunity for us to look deeper at students. We also offer the Young Scholars program. This is a program specifically designed to meet the needs of students with high academic potential. This connects to our commitment that we will provide a variety of programming to meet the needs of our students with demonstrated high ability. The Young Scholars program is looking for students who have high academic potential, and they're identified not by test scores. We actually take the time to teach gifted and talented types of lessons in the classroom, and then we are watching for specific indicators. We're watching to see which students perform in the same way that we would expect students who are achieving at the highest levels to perform. We don't look at standardized tests, we look at their response to enrichment. Once students are identified for this program, we are giving them scaffolded rigor so that we can give them the rigorous instruction that they need with the supports to put them on the path for advanced academics. Another component of this program is identifying students who are less likely to pursue advanced academics on their own without some sort of catalyst or intervention. This is Ahmed Nasir, He's from Madison. He's in 5th grade. He's been a Young Scholar for 3 years. And he is known to be around Madison with his stethoscope. He's known to stop in the morning and talk to his teacher about the coding book that he's checked out. And he's really connected with the Young Scholars program. His achievement is above grade level. He's on track to access advanced academics in his middle school career. But he's also connected with the social and emotional component of Young Scholars, which is seeing himself as an academic learner and leader. It's a core component of our program to help these students develop a growth mindset, to see themselves as a scholar, and to think about their future. And so we talk a lot about leadership. This year, Ahmed Nasir got to write leadership goals, and I want to share those with you today. His first leadership goal was to never give up, no matter what. His second was to do what it takes to make the world a better place. His third was to think of others before himself. And his fourth was about leading groups. He shared with his teacher that when he leads a group, he feels like he is leading the whole world, no matter what, and that he believes that teamwork is the common vision to reach all of our goals. So it's clear that this program has impacted him. He's seeing himself as a leader, and he has the opportunity to get what he needs to nurture that potential. This is some data from last year for the students in our Young Scholars program. Although these students are not identified by test scores, we note that 1/3 of the students in this program increased the proficiency level from the previous year. Because we don't identify based on any scores, we have a wide range of ability in these classes. What this means is that students who were partially proficient the year before moved to proficient, or proficient students were moving to exceeds. So we had 1/3 of our students. We also noted that 58.5% of the students in Young Scholars were proficient in the area of reading, and that was 10.5% higher than our elementary district proficiency level. We're also carefully watching their growth because our goal is to accelerate their growth. And so when we look at the STAR tests, we noted that nearly 70% of the Young Scholars were growing as much or more than their peers across the nation, and that was an 11% increase from the year before. So we're seeing that the students in this program are achieving and growing at high rates. In addition to the Young Scholars program, we provide services for students who are already achieving at high levels. We have an option of clustering students in a high achievement cluster, which is about 5 to 7 students in a classroom who have needs that are far beyond grade level. They're in that classroom to create a peer group and also be with a trained teacher who's received in-depth and ongoing support in meeting the needs of these students. But we know that students who have needs that are 3 or 4 years above grade level can be challenging for a general education classroom teacher to meet their needs. And so we also provide talent development specialist support in the area of reading and math. But because we're a needs-oriented program, we provide on-ramps and off-ramps for our students so that they're able to access the programming when they need it. If they weren't clustered, we're able to say to them, you can use pre-assessments, we can look at your data that's from the next STAR test, and we can flex you into the services provided by the talent development specialist, whether or not you were part of that cluster. We want to create the most access possible for students when they need it. This is in direct connection to our belief and our commitment that identified students require differentiated instruction and specialized programming. It is not enough for us to say, yes, that student's exceptional, they're achieving at high levels. We must do something to respond in order to achieve that year's worth of growth. And this is Jackson, and he's one of those students. I met Jackson and his family when he was a 2nd grader, and he had been previously homeschooled. His parents knew he was a bright boy, but they were concerned that his needs would not be met in the general education setting. When he came to Westwood, he became part of the high achievement cluster and has worked with their talent development specialist until now, where he's a 5th grader. The talent development specialist shared with me that Jackson is doing deep and complex thinking with texts far, far above the 5th grade level. He talked about Jackson's passion for words and how he's able to be part of the Word Masters program, and he's looking to be a 3-time champion, and he recently achieved a rare perfect score. So he has those opportunities within the classroom. He's also a part of the VEX robotics team, which has been huge for him. His mom shared that this is an incredible asset for District 742. And she shared not only has the educational impact been great, but also the social and emotional. She stated that having a consistent teacher has really been significant to the overall development of her child. Having that same person be with him year after year and continue to push him to new heights and challenge him has been something that she has really appreciated that we provided in the district. The students who are high achieving are often the hardest students to show growth. They're at the top of the scale. There's not a lot of room for them to grow. It's very common to see students lose ground over time, so we carefully watch to see how our students are achieving. Last school year, we saw that nearly 60% of the students who were seeing our talent development specialists in the area of math were growing at an accelerated rate. It's important to note that these students are being compared to other high achievers across the nation. So what we're doing is looking at children who are at the 95th percentile, comparing them to other children at the 95th percentile to see how our students are growing. We see 60%, nearly 60% growing at that accelerated rate. We also noted that 2/3 of them were achieving typical or accelerated growth in the area of reading, and that 80% were able to maintain or increase their percentile rank. This is significant because if you're at the 95th percentile or the 99th percentile, there's not a lot of room to grow, yet 80% of the students accessing this program were maintaining or increasing that percentile rank. And then sometimes we have students who are exceptional. Their needs go far beyond what we can provide, even with the robust talent development offerings that we have. And for these students, we offer grade and subject level acceleration. This is in direct connection to our belief that we need to provide challenging and supportive educational experiences and environments. And so when we find these students, we look at what are their needs and do we need to serve them in another grade level. This is India, and India is an 8th grader at South, but when she was at Oak Hill and was a 4th grader, she felt that her needs were not met. Her family had contacted our talent development department to say, what is it that we can do for her? And she did accelerate into 5th grade. She's noted that it has been very impactful for her, that she was very much too comfortable where she was at, and she needed more challenge. Accelerating a grade level gave her the motivation to try new things. She's currently accessing every advanced option that she can at South, and is even taking math at Tech, where she's actually 3 years ahead now if we look at her chronological age. So we've really been able to match her to the services that she needs. She's also talked about the social and emotional benefits and how she's really found her friend group through this acceleration. Last year, I shared with the board that we had some gaps in our programming, and that was by design in some regards. We knew that implementing 4 things over 8 sites at the same time would have been a strain on the system, and so what we did was we did a stepped implementation where our elementary sites were choosing 1 or 2 components of programming to implement, to give them an opportunity to get that sort of under their belt and established before adding something new. But last year, it became clear that we were not providing equitable access to our services. A student who is at Kennedy was not able to access Young Scholars if they would have qualified for it because it wasn't available. And another example would be a student at Lincoln who should really be in a high achievement cluster classroom and receiving math and reading support in order to grow, was not able to access that service because it wasn't offered at the time. So I had proposed last year that we shift to talent development specialists, and we have each program offered at every site. We wanted our sites to be able to allocate their resources based on needs, and so each site looks a little bit different, but our expectation is that all programs are offered at all sites. I also asked the board to support the successful implementation with some staff allocation in order to have the support that we needed at the sites in order to offer all of the programs. I had 3 expected outcomes if we moved to this model. The first being that students would be accessing programming based on their academic need and not where they lived. And I'm happy to report today that all of our sites are offering all of our programs at the elementary level. We also anticipated that if we were able to have all programs at all sites, our identified talent development students would closely match our district demographics. The reason we predicted that was that Talahi Elementary, who was fully implemented, was closely matching their district demographics. So we had a hypothesis that the same would happen across the district. Here you'll see the district percentage of student groups along with the percentage of identified talent development students. And you'll note that we are very close to equitable representation for each of our racial groups. While American Indian students are 1.1% of our district, they're 1.2% of our talent development programming. Our Asian students are very close. You'll see that our Black students, while 42% of our district, are 40.6% of our talent development program, slightly underrepresented, but only 1.5%. Hispanic students, who historically are underrepresented in gifted education programs, are slightly overrepresented in District 742, and our white students, who make up 45% of our district, also make up 45% of our talent development programming. We do have some work to do with our special education and English learners. We see that although 19% of our our district is special education, 6.9% of our talent development students are special education students. And for our EL students, 24% of our district is English language learners, but only 16.8% of our talent development programming. So we do have some work to do. We have some significant work to do to find and identify students to fulfill our belief that we believe that there are talented students in every one of our student groups. However, knowing that we are matching our district demographics racially quite closely, we're going to celebrate that. And I would like to share that it is exceptionally rare to see that across the nation, that gifted and talented programs historically underrepresent Black, Hispanic, English learners and special education students and American Indian students. So we're very proud to report that we are very close to equitable representation. I also had the expected outcome that more students would be on the path to advanced academics, and we've been able to serve 630 elementary students, which is an increase of 173 from the school year before. So each of our talent development staff is serving about 70 students, but that does vary by site. And so we were able to achieve that expected outcome as well. Our programming doesn't stop in elementary. We also have program models at the middle school level. School-wide enrichment shows up here again because if we believe that it's good for all of our elementary school students to access this type of programming, we believe that about our middle school students as well. We just started this year, and you'll see some students from North who are sharing some of the posters that they created during their school-wide enrichment time. We also recognize that we need some specialized programming to meet academic needs. So we offer an advanced language arts option, which is a multi-age class where 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who are performing at the highest levels in language arts are able to come together and work on standards for 9th and 10th grade. We also use instructional strategies that are best practices in the field of gifted education, like interdisciplinary learning, rigorous projects, in-depth experiences, and real-world experiences as well for learning. Our math acceleration model allows students to accelerate 1 or 2 years when they leave 5th grade. This is new this year, our 2-year acceleration model. We were recognizing that we had many requests from parents to move ahead in math, and so we have put protocols in place so that students can accelerate right as they leave elementary school and not miss critical content along the way. We also know that some students are ready for a challenge but at their grade level, and that's where honors programming comes in. This is an opportunity for students to get grade level core, grade level content, but have some instructional strategies that increase the rigor for students. I have a couple of advanced language arts students who are going to share their impact of talent development programming with you at the end via video, so I won't tell a story here, but I will share with you that we are seeing great performance and growth from these students. These students often are very close to maxing out the STAR test. The STAR test caps out at 1,400, and many of the students in this program are well into the 1,300s for their score. Yet 3/4 of them increase their score from fall to spring, and 74% of them are showing that typical or accelerated growth. We're not seeing the students losing ground, and that's by design. We're very strategic in the programming and the educational opportunities that we offer in this class, and we align them to the needs of the students. For our math acceleration, we have that connected to our belief that talented students have different educational needs than their peers of similar age, experience, and environment. We can't always have students with their age mates to meet their educational needs. This is Charlie, and he's a 6th grader at South. And he is one of our first doubly accelerated students with our new protocols. He's consistently been performing at the 99th percentile all through elementary. He was at Clearview last year where we had no support for him as a talent development program, which is unfortunate, but he's now accessing math at his instructional level. And what he shared is, I finally get to learn the things I'm ready to learn, and how exciting that was. His mom was very excited to see the growth that he's achieved just from fall to December, and she noted that his STAR score increase just in the first part of the year was very close to the entire growth that he made last year. So very proud and pleased to see that he was getting the services that he needed. And she also cited that she sees this as an exceptional benefit of District 742. We did look closely in 2016 at the representation of our students in honors level programming, and we found that we did have significant underrepresentation of Black students at the middle level taking advanced courses. Since that time, we've put efforts in place to work with teachers, to make buildings aware of the underrepresentation, to talk about exactly who honors classes are for and how we can look broadly to identify students and match them to the programming that they need. And since that time, we have had a 50% increase in the number of Black students taking advanced courses in middle school. Although we still underrepresent Black students at the middle school level in advanced courses, we are making progress, and the building administrators have been instrumental in having the conversations with their staff around equitable representation in honors level courses. One thing that we do is look to place our young scholars in an advanced course as they exit elementary school and go into middle school. For the students who were placed in an advanced course, who are former young scholars, we see that they have a high success rate and that 77% of them achieved A's or B's in those courses. And remember, these were students who were unlikely to take these courses without some sort of intervention or catalyst or support from the school. And so we're happy to see that by providing that service, we see some success long-term. At our high school level, we have a wealth of opportunities. Charlie shared many of them with you, and we can really target our instruction at the high school level to the needs of our students and our students who are performing at high levels. You can see the wealth of AP courses. We have students getting college credit within our schools, have dual enrollment opportunities, but what's really key is that rigorous instruction and support as early as possible. When I think back to Benjamin Bloom's quote, I know that we cannot waste any of that potential. The sooner that we find and identify students who have this capability and match them to the services, the more likely that those students are to continue on the path of advanced academics. So we have that support at elementary and middle school to put more students on the path to accessing these wonderful options at the high school. We are proud of what we offer in District 742, but we are striving for excellence. The National Association for Gifted Children produces standards for districts to be able to check themselves or assess where they are. And from those standards, I can identify next steps for our district. The first next step is to partner with our Student Services Department, and that's already begun. I've presented at the Special Education Leadership Team about dual exceptionalities, twice exceptional students, and how they're difficult to find and they have a unique profile. But by educating our special education leadership, our school psychologists, and our teachers, we can help to find more students who have both learning challenges and learning exceptionalities. We also know that our students who demonstrate gifted and talented traits and behaviors do so all day long, and so we know that we can support them by supporting their parents. So we're currently looking at developing parent programming where parents are able to learn a little bit more about their child. What makes them tick? How can I support my student at home? And by supporting the parents, we can support our students. We've expanded professional development this year in the area of high-achieving, high-potential students. All of our high-achievement cluster teachers receive in-depth training and then multiple opportunities throughout the school year to learn new resources and instructional strategies to continue to challenge students within the classroom, because even though we provide a talent development specialist, we know that that's only a portion of their day, and we want students engaged and challenged all day long. We also know that students with these types of traits and behaviors often have very unique social and emotional needs, and unfortunately, they go overlooked. These students are achieving at high levels, and very often that social and emotional piece is not something that's on the radar, and so we know that we need to be really mindful of that. We are looking at a social and emotional learning needs assessment so that we can program for social and emotional learning alongside academics. But we don't want to just assume that we know what our students need. So we're going to be looking to assess the program models to say what are the critical pieces that we can add in to support our students. This is a video that shares one staff member and two students who are impacted by talent development. Both of the students are middle schoolers, one from North and one from South, who were part of elementary programs and now have transitioned into middle school programs. Oh, okay.
So what I love about being the talent development specialist is that I really get to teach three different pieces in my program. The first piece is high achievement students. So these are children that are already scoring very well in reading or in math, and I get to take them out and basically just build on the differentiation that's happening in their classrooms. The second part of my program is young scholars, and that's where we've gone and we've identified kids who have the potential to work up to those high scores like the high achievement kids are doing. The other piece for young scholars, which I really enjoy, is our work on growth mindset. So we teach the kids that, you know, if you get to a part of your project and you turn to me and you say it's hard, I go, that's perfect, because then you're at the place where your brain is actually growing.
Young Scholars has helped me figure out different ways to manage all of the homework I have. Before I joined the Young Scholars program, a lot of the assignments we had, like, I never got them done because I didn't really care for them. It's helped me pay attention a lot more in class because I didn't pay attention a lot, and we also did a bunch of hands-on activities which got me a lot more interested in learning. Right now I'm in the advanced language arts class. We're working on a half-verse novel.
These advanced classes are really helping me because I feel like the grade level would be a little bit too easy for me, and it's the perfect combination of easy and hard in my math classes, and it's challenging and fun. In my advanced LA class, we've been writing a novel, which was really fun to do, and we got to think very hard about character development and plot twists, which was very fun to do. When I get older, all these advanced classes will come together to create a new type of job that will affect the world.
I always knew that if I didn't have the passion for teaching anymore, it would be time to quit. But when I got the opportunity to teach in this program, I've found it so exciting and so motivating just to watch kids and help them grow along in their learning journey. And I'm just feeling like 35 years, but I have a high passion for this work yet. I really do.
So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this programming with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
No?
I would just start by saying, wow. I mean, I've seen this is the third time you've presented, I think. And every year it just gets better. I'm so glad to see that we have it all at all schools now. That really hurt last year when you'd see that chart and you'd know that certain students weren't getting what they needed at certain schools. But I can't think of another program that gets me more excited than this. I mean, we've done it for years in hockey and football and basketball. Any kid that shows spectacular talent and stuff, we give them all the tools that they need. But when it came to education, for some reason, if you had a student that was performing at an accelerated rate, they'd just be bored. And they'd do good, they'd do great on their tests, and everything would seem to be going along just fine, but they were never challenged and they were never brought to the level and the potential that they have within them. And it's just incredible that we, and Willie, I'll thank you specifically for putting the program in place and recognizing that it needed to be put there. But to be able to take these kids and bring them to a level, we don't know how high we can take them, I don't think, at this point. When we identify them in first grade, we've only been doing it for a couple of years. When we identify them in first grade and we give them accelerated programming the entire way through school, how far are they going to get? And what type of impact will that have on their lives? And I know I've brought this up in previous years, but are there any other districts around us that offer a talent development program such as this?
Ours is very unique. We have the most options. Most of our surrounding neighbors will program for high achievement, but the programming for high potential is unique to us. You see that in the metro area, but not locally.
No, I'm talking just locally here.
Yep.
So Sartell, Sauk Rapids, Cathedral, none of them are offering these types of services. And so if I'm a parent that has a student that I believe is a high achieving student, I can put them in one of those school districts, and they'll probably be bored the whole way through, and they'll graduate. They'll do well, they'll graduate, and I'll feel really good because they graduated in a school that has a very high graduation rate. But if I would have put them in the St. Cloud district with maybe more challenges within the schools and more, maybe a slightly lower graduation rate, but my student gets talent development services the whole way through, they might graduate 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ahead of where they would graduate if I stuck them in the safe school district or in the safe school.
That's correct. And our advanced language arts multi-age is, I don't know of anyone else that offers it anywhere.
Yeah, and I haven't heard of anything either. And I'll tell you something else when I talk to parents, and you know, Natalie, you're always saying that you're looking for selling points for our district. This is probably the biggest selling point we have, and boy, is it well known out there, because if you start talking to parents about the talent development program that we have, if they have a student that would qualify for it, the first thing out of their mouth is, oh, I know about that. Yeah, I know that. That's awesome. And they just have nothing bad to say about it. So it's just an incredibly exciting program. And like I said, I don't think that we know, we aren't even close to knowing what the potential of some of those students when they're given the accelerated services for 12 years, what their potential is. Which is going to lead me to one question that I have for you, and that is, we talk about a third grader who is performing at a 7th grade level and they're given appropriate programming. Talk about a 7th grader might be performing at a 10th or 11th grade level and they're given appropriate programming. When it comes to high school, and we say have a sophomore or a junior in high school who's maybe performing at a high college level, what do we do there for programming? I know we have some accelerated programming available, but do we have the programming available that would bring them to that level, or do we partner with St. Cloud State or something like that to get those students into the appropriate levels?
So even before we had any talent development services, we had these students in our schools, and our counseling staff at the high school level has been exceptional in meeting needs and connecting students to the programming that they need. I've also been working with the high schools to open up more pathways for students to move through coursework more quickly now that we have some of these options, and so those pieces are in place as well, so that students who, for example, are in the advanced language arts course have some options at high school to branch out and actually move faster through the curriculum. But we do want to match those needs. So what's exceptional about 742 is all the course offerings that we have. Students can stay within our schools and have a very challenging, rigorous experience. But we also do partner with some of those outside agencies, whether it's St. Cloud State or other universities, to connect kids to the programming that they need.
Okay. And then lastly, the social emotional portion of it, I am very happy to see that also. A kid that is accelerated many years beyond their grade level, it's a very lonely place to be.
Yep.
And I hope that we're working with each and every one of them. I think that they struggle, not all of them, but I think that a number of them struggle emotionally because they're so far ahead and they're just not in,
So asynchronous development's the term for that, and that's where your brain is developing so fast, but you might socially be here. And those kids very rarely find a place where they fit perfectly. So social and emotional is critical for those learners. You're right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Les?
I echo everything that Al said, and so I won't repeat it, but even though it's worth repeating.
Thank you.
A question, and I'm going to read one of the quotes from you. Our identified talent development students should closely match our district demographics. Did this, and then I saw the slide, did it happen by accident or randomly, or was it purposeful?
So I would say that it's a bit of both. We're very purposeful in how we identify students. We have identification protocols that if we're looking for a young scholar, we're looking for X, Y, and Z. If we're serving a student in high achievement math, we're looking for X, Y, and Z. But because we offer programming that is more broad, we look more broadly. I also educate the talent development specialists on how does intelligence show up across cultures. And so that if I only think about intelligence from my lived experience, I'm limiting my view of that. And so I don't believe that it was either one or the other, but I think what really makes it work is that we don't just have one definition for what this can be, and that we also think about it from multiple and differing perspectives.
I would suggest to you very seriously that you begin to write a manual on how you did this, because other people need to know, because this doesn't often happen. We had to be very purposeful about AP classes and those kinds of things. This is worth a book on how to gather and have it all of a sudden turn out like it should. So thank you.
I was very excited to see it turn out as it should.
One other point I want to make, and this is for fun. I assume you have seen Britain's Got Talent and those kinds of things. I want you to know that if you ever say or anything like that, the place is going to explode.
I did say today.
Never has said or ever.
Thank you.
That book deals after you're done working for the district.
Okay. Noted.
I already told Laura that I was going to say this, but I have to brag on Laura. Oh my goodness. When we made the switch from Stride to 742, we were concerned because some of the things that were available at Stride, we weren't sure if they were available in the district. I can say they're available and even better. First of all, Laura answers my emails usually within like 30 minutes. I don't know how she's amazingly doing that. She's always available by phone if I have questions. And, we have 3 kids that are in the talent development program at Westwood. My daughter was so excited. She got into the car on Monday, and her goal has been to get into Mr. Tax's math class for the whole year. And she got in, and this is her 3rd time taking the test. And she said, "I'm in, Mom." And she was so proud of herself. And to have that goal set and to meet it was amazing. Quinn and Aaron, who are at North, Quinn has been in Advanced LA for 2 years. And he wrote a novel. And he's like, I didn't even think I liked writing. But just that plus Aaron being in honors science, I was going through with him about his cell test yesterday. I don't know any of that stuff. But his note-taking was meticulous, which I know he's been taught this year. So I could go on and on and on about the ways that my kids have really excelled, thanks to your work, Laura, and thanks to the work at the schools. But you're exactly right, Al. This is the thing that I lead with. When people say, why do you send your kids to 742? I say, well, have you met Laura? And do you know about our talent development specialist? The last thing I want to ask you, or the thing I want to ask you about, is funding. So I was, part of our legislative ask is that, and it's actually an ask over the whole Minnesota-wide, is to increase funding per pupil for gifted and talented. I think it's from 13 to 39. Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit about our funding? And I mean, I'm sure you would support the increase in funding, but how are we funding this wonderful program? And do you feel like there needs to be more? And kind of what are the next steps with that?
Sure. So gifted education funding from the state is $13 per pupil, and that's not identified pupil, that's your total student body. So however many students we have times $13 is what we get. So 10,000 students, $130,000, which doesn't actually go very far. By the time you hire one full-time staff member to coordinate, pay salary, benefits, that sort of thing, you don't have a lot of money left. So we've been able to do this work through partnerships, looking at what are other departments who have common goals. So if we think about our Young Scholars program, we're looking to actualize potential of students who typically are not represented in advanced programming. And Equity Services is also having that similar goal. So we're able to partner that way. We're able to work creatively with our schools who are receiving compensatory dollars and having our principals know that this is a priority and that we want all of these positions represented. I don't get to do all of the budgeting or staffing piece. What I can do is advocate, and I'm just so thrilled that our district has stepped up and provided that, because what could typically happen in our district would be that, okay, we'll provide a district level oversight, we'll have a little bit of money for maybe some resources in PD, and that's where it stops. And that's very common, a very common story. And so it's because of partnerships, and it's because of us really telling the story of why it's a need that we've been able to creatively fund and program this. If we had more, we could do more. So there is no limit to what we could do. Right now, at the middle school level, we have our classes and we have our staff, but we don't have articulated GT staff. And so that would be a wonderful dream to be able to say, how does having a staff member influence social and emotional learning, or providing additional classes, or providing more supports for enrichment, targeted instructional seminars for students, and those types of things. At the elementary, we are getting it done, but our staff at the elementary will always tell you they need another person, especially at our bigger site. So they're exceptional. They don't turn kids away. There are schools where their numbers are in the over 100 students that they're serving, and we will continue to do excellent work whether or not we get that funding, but it would be a nice benefit for sure.
I can't wait to see you next week at South. Can you talk 1 minute about that little program? Is that part of this talent?
Spelling Bee, that's right.
Spelling Bee.
I know, I got to be ready for that. That is one of our academic achievement. So we also do offer academic achievement, which is really that equitable access, anybody can be in type of a deal. So things like Knowledge Bowl or Spelling Bee or Geography Bee, those are open access. We know that we should certainly have opportunities for kids who are excited about those types of things. And so, yep, Spelling Bee is next week, and any kid who is interested in the Spelling Bee from 5th grade to 8th grade was able to participate in their building level B, and then we'll go on to the district next week. So that's one of those pieces of our programming, but it isn't necessarily strategically meeting one of our core beliefs, but it's something that's really important that we believe in, having that enrichment for anyone who wants to go further.
Thank you. Monica?
I thank you very much for your presentation. As I was listening to your answers, I got to ask you to repeat something. What is the difference between high achievement and high potential, the two programs?
So the difference between the programs or the difference between the two groups of students?
Program.
The programs are the scaffolding that's provided. And so really when I'm training the staff in talent development or doing any type of professional development, we're looking at how do we challenge students to a high level of rigor. And our students who are achieving already at high levels tend to be able to go faster and need less supports or scaffolds to be able to access that. So I was training the staff last week on how do we teach 3rd graders how authors can use strategies to change a point of view of a narrator, and what are the patterns, and then how can they use those patterns as writers. So that was the idea. But then for our Young Scholars program, we talk about, okay, if our students are not achieving at high levels, what are the articulated supports that this lesson would need to get them there? Would there need to be additional time? Would we need to break down the reading? Would we need to have text available to be listened to? Would we provide graphic organizers to chunk things out? And so the programming is really different, mostly in the scaffolded support. The other piece is the social and emotional is a little bit different. Our high achievers tend to need things like support with perfectionism, anxiety, those types of social and emotional needs. Our students who have high academic potential tend to need support in seeing themselves as an academic leader or learner. So we approach the social and emotional a little differently, but it's always tailored to student needs. We can't blanket social and emotional programming, but those are the themes that we see between the two types of programs.
All right, thank you very much for a great presentation. Willie?
You're welcome.
Don't go anywhere yet.
Okay.
And so, first and foremost, Al, thank you for the comment that you directed at me. I believe Natalie asked a question about budget. And so some people would take that, if you listen to that answer, that would be another cross-subsidy, if you understand where I'm coming from with that. What I wanted to say was, and most of the board already said this, Laura has been outstanding in this role, developing this program. And I need to say thank you to the board for a few years ago supporting the implementation of that and the continued support for that. This program definitely separates us from our neighbors. There's no question there. And it's a model throughout the state because there are people that contact Laura to say, will you give us the blueprint? And she's been given orders not to share it. One of the things I do want to point out in this presentation is something that you're talking about, things that support what she's doing. And people miss this, but we as a cabinet do not, the details. So when you were looking at her presentation and you're looking at other presentations throughout the year, something that you see is data, okay? And so there's somebody sitting in the audience and I need to make sure that everybody understands that and doesn't miss that Dr. Huff, Miss Sylvia, provides things to make sure that we can make the best decisions with data that we have. And she can break it down, and that is of the utmost importance as we are all trying to do what's right by students. Thank you, Sylvia. Lastly, with that, it all falls under, there's somebody sitting here, it all falls under her department. And so that is learning and teaching, and that's Lori Posch. And so she never wants to take the credit for things. But as I'm sitting here saying thank you to Laura, and Laura's getting accolades, and I'm sitting there saying thank you to Dr. Huff because she is providing that crux of information that we need so desperately. Thank you for what you are doing for students throughout this entire district, whether it's professional development with staff or whether it's a unique program like this. So thank you. That concludes it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I sit corrected. Summary of the January work session, Dr. Mark.
Good evening, Chair Polreis, Superintendent Jett, and members of the board. The January 9th work session included a new Tech High School update. Principal Charlie Eisenreich, along with Kyle Walter, who's the on-site project manager for ICS Consulting, presented an update on the progress of the new Tech High School. Principal Eisenreich presented a brief report on the programming pieces that have been taken place since December. A committee has been assembled to discuss plans for a community grand opening. Former board member Bruce Mose and Director of Community Engagement and Communications Tammy DeLand are the co-chairs of this committee, and subgroups will take on various tasks related to the grand opening. Principal Eisenreich also shared that equipment needs through the building are now being finalized. The pilot classroom continues to be utilized, and feedback from students and staff is being used to make refinements to the selections. Work is also taking place on the master schedule. Kyle reported on the construction progress at Tech to date. He shared photos, a drone video, and also provided an updated budget summary. The second item on the agenda was Social Emotional Learning, or SEL, update. Shannon Avenson, Director of Student Services, along with Jack Peterson, SEL Coordinator, provided an update on district-wide social emotional learning implementation, including the framework around positive behavioral interventions and supports, or PBIS. The Minnesota Department of Education released competencies for SEL. Those were shared through a video detailing those competencies. Information was shared on the tiers of support in our schools. Many of our schools have been identified as PBIS exemplar schools. The information on district PBIS priorities, school-wide expectations, bullying and harassment lessons, including safe and supportive school plans, was also shared. Meetings are held with the district PBIS team monthly. Those meetings include data analysis. Also, every general education site has at least one support room staffed by at least one behavior resource specialist. Information on our support rooms was shared along with data. Community Accountability and Prevention, or CAP, is an alternative to suspension program for students in grades 6 through 10. Information and referral data was reviewed as well. Other initiatives implemented this school year include mental health professional development, as well as professional development on suicide prevention and awareness. The third item on the agenda was the legislative platform. Board members discussed the proposed 2019 Board of Education legislative platform. The Board Legislative Committee will meet and work on incorporating suggested revisions and bring it to this evening's meeting. The next or last item on the agenda were proposed revised board policies. First reading, Dr. Huff, Director of Research, Evaluation, Assessment, and Grants, reviewed proposed revisions to Board Policy 618. That policy is entitled Assessment of Student Achievement. Myself reviewed proposed revisions to Board Policy 306, Administrator Code of Ethics. Lori Posch, Executive Director of Learning and Teaching, reviewed proposed revisions to Board Policy 616, School District System Accountability. And those are also on the agenda for the second reading this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now moving on to Section 3, discussion and/or action items. First up is item number A, District Phone System Replacement by Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, Amy Skullerud, and Director of Technology, Ryan Cox.
Good evening, Chair Polrice, Superintendent Jett, members of the board. We are here tonight to present a proposal for the district phone system replacement. We'll start with a little background. The current phone system is over 25 years old. As we all know, technology tends to age out much sooner than that, which is why we're here with you tonight. Last spring, we did an RFP to select a new phone system. So the phone system itself has already been chosen. That was done in anticipation of the current and past building projects, starting with Quarry View, the new district office, and then completing the rollout with tech. In addition, we already have an implementation plan for Westwood. The replacement of the phone system for Westwood was part of the school safety grant that we submitted and were awarded. So we do already have a predetermined funding source for the Westwood project. In the RFP, we did the RFP with the immediate intention of these buildings, but we also worded the RFP to include pricing guarantees for a period of 5 years, knowing that the age of our system was going to require replacement in the near future. We've recently had a number of issues with the current system. Last summer, there was an incident where the system had to be taken offline for maintenance. There were issues with it crashing when it went to reboot. So that's clearly a concern. There's also been difficulty in finding parts due to the age of the system and the fact that it's outdated. In addition, an advantage of the new system is that it allows us to move to E911. With an E911 system, dispatchers are able to pinpoint the exact location of the call. Each room or location that has a phone in the system or in the building has a direct dial, and so they can tell that it's coming from a particular room or a particular part of the building. Currently, when there's a 911 call, all it tells dispatchers is that it's in the building, but they don't know what portion of the building. So particularly in our larger buildings that cover a fair amount of footprint, that's a concern. And you might be asking why now. So we've known that our phone system is aging and is in need of replacement. That's why we formulated the RFP to include pricing over a 5-year period of time. The urgency in bringing this forward right now has to come with the vacating of tech and the media services properties. So we need to be out of the media services building by midsummer. And as part of that, we're relocating our data center to the St. Cloud Police Department. And there's concerns that when we take the phone system offline to move it, whether or not it's going to come back online, and if it does come back online, is it going to be fully functional after the move? So in terms of cost, and this is a projection, so the cost here is broken down into 3 components. There's the phone system itself, which is the phones, the installation, the hookup of the system, is estimated to be approximately $295,000. That's based on initial estimated phone counts. We would have to go through and work with every building to solidify that number of phones, but we're comfortable with that as an estimate. There's also switches that are required for the new system. If there's questions specifically on that, that's out of my wheelhouse. Ryan can elaborate on what that entails. The estimate for that is $104,000. Based on that estimated price, that will require a bid. So again, that's just an estimate. We would solidify that pricing with a bid at a later date. And then there's some cabling and other small part costs just under $100,000. So the total estimated cost is estimated not to exceed $494,240. And again, that's for the remaining buildings, excluding those 4 that have either already been done or will be done that we discussed earlier. And then in terms of funding, so the proposal that you have to vote on this evening is to fund the replacement of the phone system out of fund balance assigned for future projects. This fund balance originated from a couple different sources. So there's remaining insurance proceeds that were set aside for future projects from the Roosevelt fire, as well as some proceeds from the sale of district property, which is primarily from the sale of Colts Academy in St. Joseph. That fund balance as of June 30th, 2018 was $683,924. There is a portion of that. This funding source is the same funding source that was utilized for the district office relocation and renovation. And so that wasn't fully completed as of June 30th. We were still moving and transitioning and finalizing some of the technology and things after year end. So a portion of that fund balance is already spent in the budgeted amount for that project. That equates to roughly $130,000, which still leaves over $550,000 in this balance. Utilizing this assigned fund balance does not affect our unassigned fund balance or the fund balance percentage that we discuss at audit time, and that's outlined in the board policy. Are there any questions?
Al?
Jeff, I would move that we approve the district phone system replacement.
I second.
All right. I just had one question, Amy. Is all the mapping done?
The
mapping for locations inside the new tech and...
So new tech is pretty well because all of that is part of the plan for where jacks and everything go. So the counts for tech are finalized. We have that pretty much set. We haven't formally finalized the other buildings that we'd be replacing, although it's going to very closely mirror what we currently have. It's just a matter of doing that full inventory and sitting down with each building principal to finalize how many locations. And being very, very mindful, particularly when we're having direct numbers assigned to each phone, that if there's currently a phone in a storage room or something that really doesn't utilize people very often and isn't going to be occupied very often, or is used to be a classroom and is now a storage room, to make sure that we're putting phones where we need to put phones, but not just putting a phone there because there's a phone there currently. So that process will take place here rather quickly in the next month, so that we can get final quantities, bids out, items ordered, and everything scheduled before we have to be out of the current building.
And is this happening when we transfer into St. Cloud PD? So when it comes back online, it's the new back online?
So we will have everything done before we have to vacate tech. The plan right now is to move the data center over spring break. The phone system may not fully be implemented by that time. We would leave the current phone system at Media Services until it's fully rolled out. But for sure, that full implementation would be done before we have to be out of the Media Services building.
Thanks for that reassurance. Al, you had another question?
Not a question, just a comment, just for board members that weren't on the board at the time. About 4 years ago, we hired a consultant to come up to St. Cloud School District and look at our phone systems and a number of different systems, our phone and security systems. And it was recommended at that point in time that this is a project of very high priority to change out the phone systems within the district. And they gave us recommendations as to what they felt was best for our district and our needs. And that's really what we're going along with. Then after that study, we did an RFP for the phone system replacement. We looked at a number of different systems, and the one that we selected, as Amy said, they guaranteed for a number of years the pricing. And we knew all along when we did it that this was a priority, and we wanted to get all schools onto one system so that we have a contiguous system, or is that the right word, throughout the district. For me.
All right, with that being said, this is an action item. Oh, and Natalie has a question.
Thank you. So you said that the fund balance right now for the assigned for future projects is around 550,000?
Correct.
Okay, and then this project is about 500,000, so then we'd have about 50,000 left?
Correct.
After this? And just wondering if there's any other projects on the horizon that you could see needing that money for?
I think members sitting at the table could give a laundry list of priority needs, safety, security upgrades. You know, $50,000 doesn't go very far, but certainly once this project is completed, and there's potential that we could come in slightly less than that. On the phone system, when we do the bids, it just depends on, you know, sometimes things come in favorably. There's no guarantee for that, obviously. So once we know what our actual final cost will be for this, and we know how much is left in that balance, then we can start having discussions about what that potentially might be utilized for.
Okay, and how do we usually get money into this specific assigned for future projects balance?
So historically, you're not going to see an assigned fund balance. It was particularly unique because we had some one-time money that had come in. Most of that had been set aside. I believe it started 3 years ago with the insurance proceeds coming in, knowing that we needed to set aside money to relocate the district office in one way or another. Before we knew that we would have the opportunity to purchase the Minnesota School of Business building, we knew that Apollo was reaching capacity, needed their space back, and so we didn't want it to go into the assigned or the unassigned fund balance and sort of skew that fund balance percentage in terms of what we have for actual operating reserves. So the assigned fund balance was set up at that time just to kind of keep it separate. Generally, once that's spent down to zero, unless we would have some sort of unique one-time money that's substantial that would come in that we'd want to set aside for a particular purpose, you wouldn't typically see that going forward.
Thanks, Amy.
Al, one more?
Yeah, well, I pretty much said what I was going to say. That isn't a fund that we normally have. It was just something that was left over from when we got a large sum of money, and we wanted to make sure that it was designated for a specific project, and this is just some residual that's left. So normally we want it to go to zero, and then we just operate out of the fund balance.
Les, would you mind having a roll call, please?
Al Dahlgren?
Yes.
Les Green is yes. Jeff Polrice?
Yes.
Zach Dorhold?
Yes.
Shannon Hawes?
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth?
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. All right, next up is item number C, discussion item, proposed new board policy reading, first reading, 497 by Director of Human Services, Tracy Flynn Bowe.
Good evening, Chair Polrice, board members, Superintendent Jett. I've got a first reading of a policy tonight in the 400 section. That's the personnel section of the policy manual. This is a policy that is not a Minnesota School Boards Association policy. It's a policy that we developed this year together with the Personnel Committee and consultation with the Board Development Committee, just to memorialize a process that we've been using in Personnel Committee for the last several years, and so that that process would be kind of ingrained for everyone for future use. The policy relates to settlement agreements with current or former employees that may take place during the course of any school year. And the policy, I won't read all of the policy to you, it's a relatively short policy, but basically what it provides is that as the Executive Director of Human Resources, I will bring to the Personnel Committee information regarding any settlement with an employee that is $10,000 or more. These could be related to employment claims. Most often they're related to workers' compensation claims. Those types of claims are typically handled through our workers' compensation insurance. They're not really out of the ordinary, but if they are larger claims, I think it's important for the Board Personnel Committee to be advised about them, be able to ask any questions about those. And in some circumstances, if we had a really significant settlement of some kind of a claim, it may be appropriate for the Personnel Committee to refer that information to the full board so that you would have that information as a full board as well. Most often, though, it's an informational item that's being brought to the Personnel Committee so that they can be aware of any particular patterns or concerns that we might want to address administratively in the school district, and that you would be advised as a board if needed, if there were any matter of real public interest.
Thank you, Tracy. Any questions? Al?
I do have a question. So I agree with you. I think that anytime there is an agreement or a settlement of more than $10,000, it should come to the Personnel Committee, and it doesn't necessarily have to bubble up to the whole board. They can make that decision. But I want to make certain that this policy doesn't preclude any member of the board from getting the information, that this isn't the only channel, that you bring it to the Personnel Committee and then the Personnel Committee makes the decision whether it goes to the full board, but any member of the board should be able to get information at any point in time if they request it individually.
Yes.
And this doesn't address that at all?
It doesn't address that, but board members are free at any time to contact me if there's a matter that they're familiar with or concerned about and want further information, of course.
Okay. Is that something we would want to include in here, or is that not something that we would want to include?
I don't think it necessarily needs to be in this policy. I think that's just a matter of general practice for board members, and I'm not sure that it enhances that by being in this policy.
Dano?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to say my only fear on stuff like that, and you'll see me bring this up in other policies too, is that I'm not worried about Tracy, I'm not worried about Willie, but 10 years from now or 15 years from now, when someone else is in your position and someone else is in your position, do they then turn around and stand up and say, well, the policy says that only the Personnel Committee
It certainly is something
gets to see that, and only if they say bring it forward does it come forward. And so I'm just wondering if it shouldn't have a line like this does not preclude any member of the board from receiving information individually, or just something to protect from that, because
certainly
policies can be used for you and they can be used against you.
Right. It's certainly a line I can add and bring back for a second reading for consideration.
Thank you.
Next up, Monica.
So I understand your concerns, Al, but I'm not sure that that will then make the fact that we wanted to make in the policy, because part of the issue that we had with this is that we don't have enough time to get to to approval of the whole board in many of these decisions, and we wanted to have some oversight over that.
I was just saying I don't want this to preclude any single member of the board from getting information. So I'm not saying that you have to bring it forward to the full board. I'm just saying that if I go to Tracy and say, I would like some information, Tracy, individually on this settlement, that she would be obligated to give me that information as an individual. and not be able to hide behind the policy and say, no, it only goes to the personnel committee.
And I think an example of that might be, it wouldn't be unusual if there were a workplace injury and someone received a settlement of $25,000 or something for workplace injury. Some of that is completely dictated by statute. We don't have any choice about that. They might find that there was a 10% disability as an account of the accident, and then the statute automatically applies a sum of money to that. And so it's not something that really requires any negotiation or consent to. The statute authorizes that, and our insurance company puts it through, but there's a settlement agreement. And so a board member hearing of that might say, what did we pay that $30,000 for? And then certainly we could provide a copy of that settlement agreement or the information that was the basis for that settlement. Any settlement agreements are public information at the end of the day, and so they certainly would be available. But I don't have any reservation about a line like that because, again, it's information that should be available to any board member.
Tracy, don't we have an overriding policy procedure for board members with their rights, privileges? I mean, that would state what Al's concern is? A blanket thing that says, hey, if a board member wants information.
I don't know if that was in some of the work that you were doing, Shannon, in board development or not. I wasn't.
And that would cover Al's concerns on a broader
handbook.
spectrum,
I agree with Al and his concern if somebody were to interpret that and shut it down and say, no, that's not how it works. What would the harm be in including a sentence in this policy?
I'm happy to draft something, and then board members can give that consideration and see if it.
Les, you had one?
We have some history years ago where what Al has suggested has happened relative to finances and a number of other things, and I think that's where the concern is. And that in the purpose statement, just maybe a reiteration of the fact that board members can ask for and receive, but that the request should go through the superintendent and not to individual staff. That's important. And the other is, my question is that board members do not have the ability, I don't think anyway, and I'm asking this, to look at a settlement and say, I want the full board to look at it. Is that?
That's correct. I think they wanted to leave that decision-making in the personnel committee level because
Right.
each of those are
All right.
so different potentially
Right.
on their facts, and it may or may not be appropriate or necessary for the full board to
Okay.
have all that information.
They can have the information and look at it. A person can do that individually, but they don't have the authority or to then kick it
If
up
it's coming to the whole board, it would come at the recommendation of the personnel committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Next up, section 3C, proposed revised board policy, second reading. Who's starting? Okay, Marcia? And you're doing 306?
I believe that's next, yes. So second reading, just wanted to point out that some of the revisions that have been made, the paragraph highlighted in yellow pretty much stayed the same, except that the language having to do with accordance in the law and with accordance with law and policy, you'll see reflected below where there have been changes made to B. It just said the educational administrator, and then there were statements made. It now says the educational administrator will, and you'll see that an item 6 has been added, and that's where it talks about in accordance with law and district policy. And then what happens if you fall out of compliance is in number 7. And then number 8, that the folks identified in this policy have a primary duty to provide timely and accurate information to the board. Questions?
Thanks for making those changes with the concerns that were brought up. Anyone have a question? All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Next up, board policy 616, school district system accountability. Lori?
Chair Pulrice, Superintendent Jett, and members of the school board. A few changes on this policy from the feedback received at the last meeting, and you'll find them on page 3. At the very top, we decided to put that curriculum review process in as an addendum so that we didn't have to do full policy review when that cycle runs out. And that is an attachment in your agenda as well. And then scrolling down towards the bottom of number 3. At the last meeting, we talked about putting a statement in there that talked about us using multiple assessments. So if you'll see the second to the last sentence says, multiple forms of assessment will be used when monitoring progress and achievement. And then down in number 1, we talked about at the last meeting, adding in a minimum number of meetings. So looking back through our meetings throughout the years, it looks like a minimum of 4 times for that committee to meet each year would be the very minimum that I would recommend that we do. And then we also added page numbers to it because the page numbers were left off. Any questions or other suggestions?
All right, thank you very much. Next up is Board Policy 618, Assessment of Student Achievement. Dr. Sylvia Huff.
Good evening, Chair Paul Rice, Superintendent Jett, members of the board. Last week, there were not any changes on Policy 618. Are there any questions this week?
Sorry. I guess volume down doesn't mean volume off.
It's fine. It's fine. There were no changes that were proposed last week, so are there any questions this week? Thank you.
Next up is item number D, the real item number D. Legislative platform, update by board member Zach Dorholt. This is an action item.
So I have copies. So as discussed at some prior meetings, even before I was on the board, questions about how much our platform and AMSD's platform might align came up. And so after those discussions, I made just a couple brief changes to what Bruce Henches had initially brought to the board. The first one was pretty much the ask. What we're asking for was to increase the money for special education cross subsidy. Really, better term is an unfunded mandate is really what it is. In light of a lawsuit being brought forth and other political changes, it sounded like the board said, well, let's ask for all of it right now. It can't hurt. So the first goal one was simply changing a dollar or percentage ask to goal 1, eliminate the special education cross subsidy. And I'm sure everyone is familiar with that. So we don't make necessarily specific ask, but we do point out that current projections have that statewide shortfall for the biennium of about $1.5 billion. So you could see it as asking for $1.5 billion. We kind of have to. That's statewide. And then I just changed a couple of mostly verbiage on goal 4, which seemed a little too pointed, and just kind of generalized it to oppose legislation directed toward diverting public education dollars. Covers a few more things, and I would say a more assertive manner. I also spoke with Scott Cronquist from AMSD, and they're still excited to have us on board. I think it's important to keep them aligned with them. what we ask for does not have to be the same that they're asking for. This way we have two angles. We're going big. They have asked for these percentages to be raised over several years. And if the lawsuit fails, or if this ask isn't taken seriously, we can go for their lower ask next time around and hope that there isn't a next time around.
All right, thank you for your update, Zach. Any questions, Al?
I would just say I'm in complete agreement with Zach. I think it's wise for our board to support fully funding special education, especially in light of the lawsuit that's been filed with the NAACP and Jerry Von Korff. They're asking for full funding of special education, so it'd be, I think, foolish for our district to ask for only a portion of it when we have a lawsuit in place asking for the full amount. So it really aligns us, even though we aren't aligning with AMSD, we're aligning with what we're really looking for in this district. And if we would get full funding, just think of the things we could do with things like talent development and others within the district. So I'm in full support.
Any other questions or comments? All right, looking for a motion? That would be you, Zach.
Okay, well, I guess I would move for the board to adopt the District 742 legislative, 2019 legislative platform.
Second?
Second.
Anybody? Monica? All right, Les, could you call a roll call, please?
I think, oh, there it came on. My microphone was not operating. Jeff Polrice,
Yes.
Monica Segura Swartz,
Yes.
Zach Dorhold,
Yes.
Shannon Hawes,
Yes.
Les Green is yes, Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Next up on the agenda is reports. We'll start with the Superintendent, Willie Jett.
Good evening, Chair Polrace, members of the board. And now you got me thinking about the and the ums. And so now I'm going to screw that up. Congratulations to Madison Elementary School's Kate Flynn for being selected by the Minnesota Elementary Principals Association for its Central Division 2019 Division Leadership Award. The award expresses appreciation for her outstanding principalship, as well as her contribution to improving education, the community, and the profession. Next, the St. Cloud Police donated mittens, coats, and boots to Transitional Education Services for homeless students and students in transition. The supplies were purchased from the Shop with a Cop program that was sponsored with money donated by Walmart and Burnix. We would like to extend our sincere thanks for all those donations received by the district from organizations and individuals. They are very much appreciated. Planning for next year is underway. Middle-level open houses are upcoming at Kennedy Community School and North and South Junior Highs. Meet principals and teachers and take a tour of the school. Information on class offerings, clubs, and activities will be available. 2019-20 kindergarten enrollment kicked off yesterday. Kindergarten open house events are scheduled at all of our elementary sites. Preschool registration began on January 14th. Preschool open houses are also scheduled at all of our elementary schools. Please visit our district website for information on dates and locations. And lastly, online student enrollment for the 2019-20 school year is open. And again, like I said, visit our website or give us a call. And last but not least, I would like to mention a student. And so she is humble, but I need to make sure I mention this student. Apollo's Lariah Washington scored her all-time career high 2,000th point, and so it smashes the previous school record. And this Apollo senior has signed to play at the Division I basketball level with Eastern Illinois University earlier this school year, and I believe there's a celebration for Lariah tomorrow in the beginning of her game. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. Next up is committee reports. We'll just work down, Shannon, you do not have one, correct?
Not met.
Natalie? No, not yet?
I just wanted to say that we have found a date for a meeting. I don't know if I say that here or not. Okay. Fourth Mondays of the month at 8 a.m.
What committee is that for?
This is for community linkages.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's at the DAO in room 110. Of course, there's a few different changes. Sometimes fourth of the month is district holidays and things like, or fourth Monday of the month. So a full schedule will be coming out soon. Thanks to Mary.
All right, next up, Al, Finance.
Finance Committee met on January 10th at 7:30. We discussed the new tech budget update and change orders that we approved tonight in the consent agenda. We had a short discussion on lighting at Quarry View. Lighting at Quarry View is a safety and liability issue that needs immediate attention, and it's really dark when you come out of that school right by the front doors. The weather, particularly wind, has made pole modifications a challenge, but there are some contingency dollars available still if we need to make some modifications to that. It's a brand new school. Certain things happen that weren't expected. We're going to get it fixed. Phone system replacement. Amy and Ryan reviewed the proposal. It would be a complete rollout of a phone replacement for 12 school sites. All three of us voted to proceed with this item and bring it to the board, and we did, and we voted to continue through with that this evening. We talked about audit RFPs. We're going to go out with some RFPs. Is it at the next meeting? It was on the consent agenda. Oh, it's in the consent agenda this evening. We've already approved it, but we've historically done an RFP for 3 years, and we said that we wanted to continue doing an RFP for 3 years, so we'll select an audit firm for the next 3 years. And then we talked about the vacant lot adjacent to Tech High School. There has been a formal letter of intent received for purchase of the lot. The committee also discussed selling the house adjacent to Clark Field. After discussion, the committee decided that we should contact a realtor and get a suggested asking price on both the lot adjacent to Tech and the house adjacent to Clark Field and review them at the next Board Finance Committee meeting. It was suggested that we notify the neighbors, similar to what we have done with the Wilson neighborhood. And it was suggested that we list these two properties with a realtor and create a very public process and not select a purchase agreement unless it goes through a bidding process. Finance Committee meeting schedule, it was decided the committee would meet the second and last Thursday of each month with the option to cancel the last meeting of the month 1 week prior to the meeting if there are no agenda items for that meeting. It was also decided to meet at 8 a.m. rather than 7:30 a.m. We got rid of our early bird. That's the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Al. Zach, do you have anything to add on, have you met?
Via email.
Okay, so no formal report, just, okay. Thanks for the work you did on the update, though.
I'll help Zach a little. He does have a report. Zach worked with the other members of the legislative committee and redrafted the legislative proposal, the legislative platform for the school board, and we did all three agree that we should move forward and bring that to the board, which he did this evening.
Zach, yeah. Would you also mind speaking about what
Nice
the
report, Zach.
membership that you're going to assume for Bruce Henches?
So AMSD asked that we continue holding Bruce Hench's spot on the legislative committee. So we'll be have that seat, which is part of the executive committee with AMSD, which is kind of nice. Shows that they need us as much as we need them.
Thank you. Next up, personnel and negotiations. Monica?
We have met. There is no report.
Les Green?
We have not met, no report.
All right, thank you much. All right, future agenda items. Future agenda items, it's item number 5. Board of Education members may request item topics for future board meeting agendas. Items brought forth should have been previously discussed with the board chair or vice chair, board standing committee, or at a prior board work meeting session. I didn't put these down here, but so far we have 3 things for the February work session. New Tech High School update, American Indian Parent Advisory Committee compliance documentation, equity update. If anybody else has any suggestions, blast me an email, will you? All right. And with that, we will conclude our board meeting. Thank you very much. Thanks for attending, ladies.